This is the biggest AR-10 comparison ever done on YouTube, and for you guys that stick around towards the end, we'll have a special discount code just for you guys.
I didn't.
82.
What?
You want to say what
You what?
you
Wear these all day.
We're
Really just
your accuracy.
Hey guys, I'm Jonah. This is Chris from 100 Concepts, and we are going over the results of our precision gas gun test. So why did we compare AR-10s? I think this platform is really interesting in the capability to put precise rounds downrange, at least in theory, but there's not a lot of data out there to show what they're capable of. When you have like a 1 MOA bolt gun, that's kind of like the standard for that gun, and you know like, hey, that's a decent bolt gun. What was the standard for the AR-10s? We didn't really have an idea, and so we wanted to do this to see what they're capable of and kind of make recommendations off of that.
So before we get into this video, just a couple disclaimers. Many of these rifles were procured in different ways, whether it was a discount or manufacturers sending us these rifles. So a big shout out to LMT, PSA, Noveske, Knights Armament, ADM, Seekins, and Daniel Defense. Huge shout out to those guys. They put it out on the line and they trusted us to do this test for them. And we're really, really thankful. With that being said, we did our best to eliminate many of the variables, and we thought it would be great to shoot these in the configuration that you guys would most likely use these in, which are, if you want to call it a DMR roll or whatever. So we shot from prone, bagged, with a bipod. We used the same scope for every rifle for both of us the entire time. Yeah. We thought that would be the best way to kind of show the practical accuracy or precision that you can expect from some of these rifles. And also note, these are one of however many rifles are out there. So this is just what we have. This is not representative of every single one out there, but hopefully the data should still be useful. Also, shout out to Badger Ordnance for the mount. We love their mounts. I have one on my personal gun. And also big shout out to Vortex. We decided to use the best scope that we had in the shop, which is the Vortex Razor HD 4.5 to 27, I believe. Very good scope. And like I said earlier, we use the same one throughout the entire test, so just swapping it around different guns to eliminate that variable.
We have 10 AR-10 or similar platforms, precision gas rifles from 10 of very prominent companies.
And they're also at different price points. So we have your budget offerings, and then we have some of your higher end offerings as well. So we wanted to represent different segments of the market so that you guys can get a better feel of what your money is getting.
Yep. Also, another disclaimer with the Laro gun, so we say we have 10, but we weren't able to actually get it operating. There's not enough gas in the system to cycle the bolt consistently. Obviously, we could chamber it individually, but then that kind of defeats the point of a semi-automatic precision gas gun. So we're going to see if we can get that operational and shoot a separate test to kind of include in this later, but right now it's actually just those 9 guns excluding the Laro. So these are also all, for the most part, off the shelf, but there's a couple exclusions to that, some things where we kind of put two things together. So we own an SP10M from Seekins, which is in 6.5 Creedmoor, and that's the lower to it is this tan lower. So we basically, when we did the 308 upper to compare all 308 rounds, we just bought the upper, put the SP10 upper on the SP10M lower. So the Laro upper is a match grade upper with one of their standard AR-10 lowers. And so it's not the Predatober, but it is one of their offerings that is kind of an off-the-shelf AR-10.
Okay, so also, along with how you guys would most likely be shooting these, we decided to do 10-round groups, which I think tends to expose what the rifle's actually capable of once it starts heating up. And the whole purpose to me, and probably to Jonah and hopefully to you guys for these DMR type platforms, is to have a higher volume of fire with better accuracy or better precision, right? So I think it's really, really important to understand how these guns start to react once materials start expanding under heat.
We would have some groups that would be like super tight, and we'd all be getting really excited, and then you get towards the end of that 10-round string and you have one that hops off into another area, and that opens your group size up. And so you'll see that when you go through these documents and things like that, that you'll sometimes have a group that's, maybe 2 away. It's not necessarily that impressive, but it really was one bullet that might have kind of thrown that data off. I definitely encourage you guys to sign up for our email list and actually go through the spreadsheet with the data, as well as all of the pictures of the groups to kind of see how they were trending.
As far as ammo goes, we chose 4 different ammos representing different grain weights. So the lowest that we had was the Spear Gold Dot, which came in at 150 grains. It's a soft point bullet. It actually performed really well. Then we have the Hornady, which is 168 grain. We have the Berger OTM Tactical, which is 175 grain. And then we have another 175 grain, which is the Federal with the Sierra Match Kings.
We chose 4 different ammos generally because different barrels with different twist rates might have a preference for different grain weight of bullets. And we wanted to give each gun a chance to maybe have a grain weight that it liked and kind of show the capabilities across the spectrum of grain weights. All right, so the testing procedure, we have a very specific procedure. It's very lengthy, but I just kind of want to hit the bullet points of that to show you guys how much we tried to remove variables in our testing. So we start off with the rifle. We make sure we set it up the same way every time. Scope goes in the same position, is torqued to the same spec. The bipod goes in the same position, and that the barrel is cleaned prior to any shooting. So the rifle's set up, the range is set up, and then we have 2 shooters, so the shooting portion, 2 shooters, they each shoot 10 rounds of each ammo. So we shoot 20 rounds total of each ammo, and we clean between each ammo. So another thing we made sure that we did was we cooled down the barrel and the chamber with a leaf blower to make sure that the barrel and the chamber were always below 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of the time we were able to get it back closer to ambient temperature around 80, 90 degrees. But basically making sure that the gun is in the same condition each time, and each gun gets a total of 80 rounds through it.
Also, to add to that, the full testing procedures will be in the spreadsheet as well.
All right, so with that said, we're gonna go through the rankings from bottom to top.
Okay, so first up, the Laro. It didn't work. So we'll go to the next one. But first things first, you're probably wondering why there's 2 different uppers and lowers here. So this is not the complete Predatober off-the-shelf Laro rifle. We reached out to them. They didn't get back to us on getting a demo rifle. And between ammo costs and some of the other rifles that we purchased, we were not able to buy one for ourselves. I think it's like $5 grand. So we got the match grade upper and paired it with a Laro lower. It did not work. So it's most likely, my theory, is that it's either undersized gas port or a misaligned gas block, or there's some friction somewhere in the system that's not allowing it to fully cycle.
All right, so we just swapped the scopes over to the Laro. We are going to kind of get it on paper, make sure it's fairly zeroed before we start shooting our groups. And we're having an issue where it's short stroking. So basically, we're racking the hammer back, but we're not actually going far back enough to pick up a round and send it into the chamber. So I'm just gonna rack this a few times and see if that helps. If not, we just might not be shooting this today because it doesn't have an adjustable gas block. We're not gonna be able to get more gas into this system. All right. Yep.
You'll see that in some of the footage as well. But in terms of overall feel, the trigger feels pretty nice. The stock, I didn't get to get behind it. Jonah actually was behind it because he was the first person that shot it, even though it didn't work. So how'd the stock feel?
I think it feels fine, but it wasn't exceptional. I think there are definitely better options out there. The nice thing about these with the triggers and the stocks that you don't like, you can just change them. Yep. It's a nice thing about having a common platform.
And that goes for most of these other rifles. You can, maybe besides the HK, but most of these other rifles, you can swap most of these parts out, triggers, grips, whatever. But we wanted to give these to you in their stock configuration, which is what I think matters when it's coming out of the box. Yeah, we'll probably get back to this at some point. We'll see if we can fix it, or
if we can get it working, we'll include that in here. But until then, it's at the bottom because it didn't work. So.
Okay, so coming in at 9th place, this is the Defense DD5. I'll talk about some of the subjective things, but I think it's important to note, these are just my thoughts, but also Jonah, the second shooter, we both had very similar thoughts on all of the rifles. Yeah. So hopefully that's pretty accurate to you guys as well using these rifles. Starting from the back to the front, so the stock, in my opinion, was not very comfortable, not a whole lot of padding. I'm not a fan of Daniel Defense stocks in general, but again, you can swap it out. The grip feels pretty good, pretty comfortable. It fits the hands very well, no complaints there. The trigger is probably my biggest complaint on this rifle. It's a pretty heavy trigger, and it felt like we had to smash it to get it to fire. And again, you can swap out the trigger, but I think that was my least favorite part about this rifle. And then the charging handle, it's an ambidextrous charging handle, so you can charge it from both sides. It actually feels really good. I actually like it. Feels very positive. The recoil impulse was pretty stiff. It was a pretty violent rifle. This is not an adjustable gas block, so you can't tame it down from the front. You could obviously change that out again. But it felt pretty violent, and the stock didn't help that either. So as far as the controls go, it does have ambidextrous controls. Both Jonah and I really appreciated that about the rifles that did have it, especially shooting and prone. The Daniel Defense does have ambidextrous bolt lock and bolt release, so that's nice to have. They feel pretty good. We both like the paddle systems a little bit better than the levers, so they did a really good job there.
All right, so the best 20-round group that it did with one ammo was 1.92 MOA, and the overall average of 80 rounds was 2.23 MOA.
All right, I did my best on that. That's just the way it's gonna be.
All right, coming in at number 8. Okay, let me just say this. Personally, I do not have any brand that I am very obsessed with. I don't own any of these. I don't own PSAs or whatever. I just like to go by what my experiences are and what the data shows. And so the Seekins, I know a lot of you guys are probably rooting for this rifle. As far as the shooting experience was, I actually really like it.
Yeah.
That recoil impulse is really nice, pretty soft. The stock is pretty good as well. So this is a SP10M lower. However, we believe that it does come with this stock on the regular SP10. And it also comes with a Magpul grip. This is a different grip that the owner of this lower swapped it out for. But overall, it's a pretty good rifle. It has ambidextrous controls. The paddle, you have to push up on it in order to lock the bolt to the rear. We prefer the paddles. I think Jonah and I can speak for him as well. It can also release from this side. All the controls feel very well. Fit and finish feels very good. The charging handle is not my favorite. It's not ambidextrous. You can only release it from the left side in the current configuration that this one is set up in. I'm not sure if they have a right side charging handle. And it feels pretty stiff in a way. Like, it doesn't have as much travel as the Radian ones do. So it just feels a little awkward. It's not my favorite one, but it works. It's just a charging handle. It does have an adjustable gas block, which is nice. So if you guys are shooting suppress or want to tame the gas a little bit, it's pretty easy to do. The trigger is pretty good. It's a single stage trigger, no complaints there. So as far as the recoil impulse goes, it's probably one of my favorites. It's very tame. You can obviously, again, you can tame the gas as well. No complaints getting behind it. I was very comfortable. Seekins will tell you that if you're not happy with the accuracy, they will make it right for you. So yeah, this is just our example of it.
The average of the best 20 rounds was 1.84 MOA, and then the average overall of all 80 rounds we fired was 2.29 MOA.
Okay, so coming in number 7th is the PWS. You're probably wondering why it is not on this table. The PWS was loaned to us from Chad at Flatline Fiber Co. We actually used his bags as well.
Yeah.
We really like their bags. I have a couple personal ones as well. The PWS, kind of weird because it's not here in front of me.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I do remember about it is that it felt very familiar. Like the way that he had it set up. I think it was a stock setup as far as the furniture goes. It felt very familiar to me as far as AR platform guns go. Recoil impulse was good. We had to open up the gas just a little bit because he had his set up to shoot suppress. The trigger felt good. Everything just felt pretty optimized for shooting. Jonah will get into the results here in a second, but I think the PWS overall, it felt good.
So the best 20 round group for the PWS was 1.79 MOA, and the overall average 80 round group was 2.29 MOA.
Yeah. And I think another important thing to note while we're here is the spread from the best group to the worst group is really not that far. So, you know, 9th or 8th place sounds bad. I mean, that's where it placed, but relatively they all perform very well in our opinions. So in 6th place, we have the ADM UIC 10A. Again, this is another one of those rifles that feel very familiar, and I think it's one of the prettiest rifles in my opinion. The fit and finish is really, really good. I think it might have the best fit and finish in terms of lockup between the lower and the upper. The rail feels really good. But starting from the rear, the stock is not set up for precision shooting in my opinion. This is like a standard AR stock. It didn't lend itself for comfort behind the gun, especially for 10-round strings. So that's one thing I would probably swap out. So the charging handle is the Radiant Raptor charging handle, very familiar to a lot of you guys out there. Probably one of the better charging handles. I like it. So the grip, this is a Magpul grip. This one is angled pretty aggressively. I didn't think it was super comfortable, but that's just me personally. I usually like more straight grips. It's okay. I think this rifle overall is kind of set up more as like a battle rifle type setup. It's, you know, lighter weight. So as far as the ambidextrous controls go, it is ambidextrous. It has ambidextrous safety with the Radiant Talon. Also, it has an ambidextrous bolt lock and release. With this one, it's the paddle style, so you have to pull to the rear and then press up. It's kind of small, so it could be easy to miss, but it's not bad. Also, the trigger, this is a Geisley trigger, I believe. It's the 2-stage. Feels pretty good. It's not a bad trigger. Pretty good trigger in my opinion compared to some of the others. But yeah, I think it's a standard Geisley trigger, so that's nice to have out of the box. It also has an ambidextrous magazine drop as well. This does have an adjustable gas block, which is pretty cool as well, and it comes standard with the Surefire War Comp. Now there's some debate on, you know, whether the War Comp is good or not, especially with suppressed use because of your labyrinth seal and everything. But we didn't shoot it suppressed, so we won't get into too much of that.
Yet.
But yeah. So we'll get into the performance.
All right, so the ADM with its best 20-round groups was at 1.66 MOA, and then the average of all of the groups that we fired was 2.06 MOA.
Coming in at 5th place, we have the HK MR762. So we have a love-hate relationship with this rifle. When it first came into the shop, I was not a fan. We have an employee that is highly in love with this rifle. But some of those opinions changed once we actually started shooting it. A couple things to mention. This is not the rail that we shot it with. This is the one that we used for testing, so we didn't take it off initially. We just swapped it after testing. This is the SDMR rail. It's part of the Army contract. We put it on here because it looks cool. No shame in that. So the stock is not super great. These sling points get in the way when you're shooting. Not a huge deal, but it was kind of annoying kind of having it slap you a little bit. Also, some proprietary parts about it, headache about it, is there is a tool in the buttstock that you need in order to depress these pins in the rifle in order to break down the rifle. You also need that same tool to put the pins back into the rifle. So you're not getting this thing apart very quickly in the field. So the magazines are also proprietary, and they are pretty expensive at $60 a pop. So yeah. So another part of the headache of this rifle was getting the standard muzzle device off. I guess they decided to weld this on there or something. So we had to send it to a Parker Mountain machine because this also does not take a standard AR-10 reaction rod. So it was just kind of piece after piece of headache with this rifle. It's a proprietary reaction rod that nobody sells anymore. So we had to send it off, and they were able to get it off for us properly. And we went ahead and put on this Griffin muzzle device because we will be doing suppressed shooting for these rifles in the future, the ones that we do end up keeping. So moving forward, this is a Magpul grip. It's similar to the one on the ADM. Not my favorite grip angle, but it's just a pistol grip. Yeah, so it does have an ambidextrous safety, which you can actuate when the hammer's down, so that's the European style. It does not have an ambidextrous bolt lock or bolt release. The magazine release, though, it actually feels really nice. It's this circular button. I don't know why it feels good, but
We like it.
we like it. Yeah. Single side charging handles. Yeah, you cannot actuate it from the right side. It's only on the left side. It does have this extended latch point here, which is pretty nice. I find it just a little bit slick, but not a huge deal at all. So moving a little bit more forward, it is a piston driven gun. And I found that the recoil impulse on this was one of the better ones, probably the best recoil impulse out of all of them.
Smooth.
Very smooth shooting, and it grouped very well. It seemed to have tight groups with all the ammos. So overall, I like it, but it's not my favorite. But the trigger is interesting. It almost feels like a double action pistol, like a Shadow 2, where it rolls over and then drops on the double action. It's not bad, but it's different. So that's probably one thing I would change out as well, if you can.
It felt very much like a DMR trigger.
Yeah.
All right, so as far as the data, like we said, it's in 5th place, and the average of the best 2 groups was 1.52 MOA, and the average of all the groups, so all 80 rounds, is 1.84 MOA.
Yep. So it did well. It did well. Just keep in mind, you will have a little bit of headache, most likely, if you're swapping things around. All right, so the rifle that you guys have probably all been waiting for, this is the PSA Saber 10A1, 4th place. Couple things to note. So this was sent to us by PSA, and this goes for every single one of these rifles on this wall. We are not testing durability, or we're not doing burn downs or anything. Plenty of people have done that already. This is testing precision of these rifles. Yeah, so those other categories, we're not going into that in this video. The performance, it did very well. So in terms of the recoil impulse, it was fairly punchy. A lot of the other ones were as well. But getting into the rifle itself, this is a B5 stock that many of you guys have as well. I don't think this really lends itself to being comfortable behind the gun as well. I actually found if you didn't have the bag just right, you would actually depress the lever and then it would actuate itself down. That's not really a fault on the gun, that's a fault on the design of the stock, because that's probably not what it's designed to do.
Or just stock selection.
Yeah, just stock selection.
That's more of a carbine stock where you want something different for precision shooting.
Yeah, moving forward, so this is the Palmetto grip. It's actually pretty nice. It kind of reminds me of the BCM grip a little bit with the texture and the angle and everything. Pretty nice grip. And as far as ambidextrous controls go, it does have the radian talon, so you have the ability to actuate the safety on both sides. Many of these rifles have that safety as well. No ambidextrous bolt lock or release. So the trigger was actually probably one of the best ones of the bunch, believe it or not. This is the PSA Saber trigger. Very nice trigger. I actually really like it.
I was genuinely surprised. Yeah. This is one of the nicest triggers we had out there.
Yeah, it is a very good trigger. I actually really like it. Yeah, so moving forward, the rail is probably one of the slimmer rails. It reminds me a lot of a 5.56 gun.
Yeah.
Just the way that it's set up, the proportions and everything, not super heavy at all. It does have the Radian Raptor LT charging handle, so very familiar charging handle as well. So I think it's set up pretty good out of the box. It does have an adjustable gas block too, so that's nice to have out of the box. So yeah, it's performed well in terms of the precision side of things. I was
really impressed with it, honestly.
All right, so as you can tell by the groups that we just checked out, the PSA does pretty good. It grouped well, it liked all the ammo, $1,200, and some might say that it is just as good. So we're gonna give it the Just As Good award.
Come on, man, get the backing off.
Go ahead. All right, so we're gonna give it this Just As Good award.
So like we said, this is in 4th place. The average of the 2 best groups, so 20 rounds, was 1.27 MOA. And the average overall of all of the groups, so 80 rounds total, is 1.83 MOA.
Not bad at all.
Yeah.
Just as good. All right, Lewis Machine and Tool. This is a lot of y'all's favorite as well. Coming in at 3rd place, we have the LMT Mars H DMR. This rifle is, I think I could speak for a lot of us around the shop that have used it. This is probably one of our favorite rifles in terms of what we would pick up if something kicked off in the world or whatever. It's very robust, lockup super good. It's just a great rifle out of the box. So getting into the feature set of this gun, this is how it comes out of the box minus this and this. So
And the sling.
And the sling. As far as the stock goes, this was our favorite stock out of all of them. It's just the most comfortable. It has, I think, some of the best adjustment. One of the coolest things is that, unlike the PRS stock, you can still adjust this stock. It still has full adjustment. Still allows you to run it really close as well for like a run and gun type setup. And also being able to move it out too, still be able to charge it. Unlike some of the, like the Magpul PRS stock, which you have to run further back, or they tend to be further back. This one, you're able to run it short all the way in or all the way out. I think that's probably one of the best parts of the rifle personally, especially shooting those longer 10-round groups. It was just super comfortable to stay behind it. The grip is pretty good. It feels great in the hand. It's a slimmer grip. Ambidextrous control. So this has probably one of the better ambidextrous controls. So it has ambidextrous safety. Just like the HK, you can also actuate the safety while the hammer's down too, which is pretty cool. Just a neat little tidbit there. It also has ambidextrous bolt lock and release. So that's great. Feels very intuitive. I like the paddles a lot better than the levers. It also has a ambidextrous magazine release on the left-hand side too. So that's pretty cool. It's not super common you see that on out-of-the-box rifles as well. So as far as the trigger goes, I think it's a pretty good trigger. It's a two-stage trigger. I think the issue is that the two-stage pull has a lot of travel, and the first stage is fairly heavy. Again, that's not a deal breaker at all. It's still a very good trigger. What's most important to me is that the brake is very clean and the reset feels good. It kind of pops you off of the trigger as well. The split times, I ran this at night as well, and I was able to get pretty good splits because of that forceful reset, so that's pretty nice as well. The charging handle is not my favorite. So it is ambidextrous, but I find it's a little small. It does have these extended levers just a little bit, so you can get a little bit more purchase on it, but I just found it just a little slick, in my opinion, so that's probably something I would change personally. I do not believe it has an adjustable gas block, but I don't really think it needed it. It shot very well. Recoil impulse was pretty tame.
This was by far like one of the best recoil impulses.
Yeah, it just seemed to stay on target fairly easily. Like you didn't have to make too many adjustments after the recoil impulse.
And I think honestly the furniture played a good part in that. You felt really connected to this rifle, and it was really easy just to keep it right on target. All right, so as far as the data goes, this came in third place with the average of the best two groups at 1.23 MOA, and the average of all of the groups, so 80 rounds, at 1.71 MOA.
Okay, so coming in at second place, we have the second gen Noveske N6. This is not on the Noveske website, but you can get it from dealers, apparently. Off the bat, I'll just say this is probably my favorite for reasons I'll get into. But yeah, overall, it shot really well. The groups just seem to, it just seems very consistent across the different ammo types. But let's get into the furniture. So back here, we have a B5 stock of some sort. I'm not exactly sure which model it is, but it is a more, DMR type or PRS type stock setup. So a couple things to note. So just like the LMT, like I just showed you, here's what I was talking about on there, the way that the LMT one is set up. So if you had this all the way in, you would not be able to get a full charge because of this cheek riser here. So you have to run it at least somewhere back here to get it. Not a huge deal again, but that is one of the advantages of the LMT. But as far as the stock itself goes, it was pretty comfortable to me. It was easy to get it set up and remain stable. Moving forward here, we have the B5 grip. This is a very familiar grip to myself because I use this one on a couple of my rifles. I like it. It is one of those more straight grip angles. It does have the Radian Talon safeties again. I think at least there's several rifles that have this same ambidextrous safety setup. I like it as well. You can also get it in the short throw configurations too. So this is in the regular 90-degree throw. So moving down to the trigger, this is the Geissele SDE trigger. It's the two-stage version sometimes. While we were shooting it, after the first 20 rounds, I kind of turned into a single stage for the rest of the group somehow, which was kind of weird. It kind of threw me off a little bit, but not a huge deal. It seems to be back to normal now. I don't know if that's
a really nice single stage.
Still a nice single stage
but it was
trigger.
Just really shocking. It's like the first stage just disappeared.
I don't know if that's a fault of the rifle or just the fault of grit and grime getting into the trigger. I know that's fairly common issue with the Geisley triggers. So the charging handle, this seems to be some type of in-house Noveske charging handle. It does have a very good angle to it. It's easy to get on there. It is ambidextrous as well. It also has a ambidextrous bolt release, so you cannot lock it from this side. Also has a ambidextrous magazine release on the left side as well, which is pretty cool to have. So that's actually cool to see that that's becoming more common, even though I don't use it because I'm right-handed. So moving forward, I think the best part about this rifle is the adjustable gas block. So it has a hole cut out here so that you can easily access it. And it has, I think, 3 different positions, and it's super easy to turn, very easy access. Toolless. Yeah, I think that's a great design.
Yeah.
We didn't get to shoot it suppressed yet, but it does come with Noveske's muzzle device here, which I think is the correct thread pitch for CGS cans, the left-hand thread hub adapters. So hopefully we'll get our hands on one of these to shoot suppressed again. But overall, the recoil impulse was pretty punchy. It was pretty punchy, but it was punchy in a good way to me personally. I found that it returned to zero very, very well.
Yeah.
And again, you can tame the gas a little bit. We had to open it up just because it wasn't cycling on the first 2 gas settings. So I think this is probably geared more towards suppressed shooting, the way that it's configured.
The recoil impulse was really interesting because it was so quick, it almost felt like a bolt gun.
Yeah,
It was like one push straight to the rear kind of feeling. And it did stay on target very well. It was just kind of a sharp, quick pull instead of like some of the other ones like the LMT and the Knights were really smooth.
Yeah, but it shot very well, shot phenomenally.
So for the data, this came in 2nd place. The average of the best 2 groups was 1.08 MOA, and the overall average for this rifle was 1.68 MOA.
All right, so in first place, it surprised us all, but maybe not to you guys, all you fanboys out there. So we have the Knights Armament SR25. Yeah, this one actually surprised us. We thought it would do about average, somewhere middle in the pack, but it outshined all of them in terms of consistency and group average.
Literally, like every category.
Yeah, in every category. Like it had a very good group too, as you'll see if you have access to the spreadsheet as well. All right, so hopping into this rifle, the SR25, starting at the rear, this is a new Magpul stock, the MOE PR. They actually did a pretty good job with this. For whatever reason, this seemed to do very well with a bag. I didn't think it would, but it just seemed pretty comfortable. The stock is pretty slimline, so it doesn't have an adjustable cheek riser or anything, but it was still very comfortable somehow. But again, you can swap this out for whatever you want. So yeah, moving forward towards a pistol grip, it's very ergonomic, kind of forms to your hand, so it's pretty comfortable to shoot. Moving up towards the firing controls, it does have an ambidextrous safety, so you have it on both ends. Very tactile, feels pretty good. So it does have a ambidextrous bolt release, so you can release it from the right side, which is pretty nice. The trigger is a 2-stage trigger. It has a little bit of take up. The brake is not super light, but it still feels good, fairly crisp. Moving to the left side, it does have an ambidextrous magazine release, which is nice to have, another one that has it, so that's pretty cool. So the charging handle it has ambidextrous controls here too. The latches are pretty nice. It's still a little oddly shaped for me. I guess it's what I'm used to, some of the Radians and the other ones that I run. It's nice, it has enough texture, it's easy to rack, whatever. The actual shooting experience, it felt pretty good to stay behind. I think the muzzle brake had a part to play with that as well.
Yeah.
It recoiled pretty smooth. It felt pretty sharp, fairly punchy.
I felt like it was actually one of the smoother recoil impulses, but I think what was sharp about it is this brake is very aggressive, and so there was like a concussive wave coming off the front of the rifle.
Yeah, but it shot very well. Like every single ammo type, it did not really seem to care what ammo it was. I think we also got a sub-MOA group with it on a 10-round group, which is pretty good. Yeah, it really surprised us. It performed well.
All right, Jonah. Since this is the Knights Armament, it deserves
Yes.
this patch.
And it even has Velcro on the lower receiver. Very nice. It's a thing of beauty. All right, so in first place, the average of the best two groups was 1.01 MOA, so close to a true 1 MOA. And then the average of all 80 rounds, all of the groups, was 1.45 MOA. So it's for sure 1.5 MOA gun and almost a 1 MOA gun on one of the ammos. But on that, just a couple things I wanted to note. We also include in the spreadsheet, which go sign up for our email list. We'd love to get you guys this data. We also looked at the individual groups. So like I said, all the data points we've been doing, we're averaging both shooters. But with the individual groups, only 2 of the rifles actually had a group that was under 1 MOA, and that is the Lights Armament SR25 and the Noveske N6. Everything was still performing very, very well, but those are the only 2 that actually had a sub-MOA group. And that's kind of one of the things we've noticed with this is there's not a huge spread between like the quote unquote like worst performing guns and the best ones. Really, all of these did very well. And with, looking at that best group, what we've been looking at here, none of these rifles with the right ammo were over 2 MOA. And so we think that's a really great standard for these rifles to say, you should shoot for a gun, you should strive for a gun that is 2 MOA or less. And all of these guns are capable of hitting that benchmark when you choose the right ammo.
Yeah. With 10 round groups.
With 10 round groups, which is awesome. Some of these we saw, there was like really tight groups and like one flyer. So we're glad that we did those 10 round groups, but the fact that we had some of these that were sub MOA with 10 round groups and that all of these with the right ammo were sub 2 MOA with 10 round groups is really impressive. So shout out to all of these manufacturers. They're doing incredible things with this platform.
And to add to that a little bit, I think our mission here at OHC is to inspire and educate. So I think especially with these types of platforms, DMRs, GPRs, whatever ARs you guys are running, we should push that accuracy standard to 10 round groups. I think it really helps show you what your rifle is actually capable of when it starts getting hot, when you're putting more rounds down range.
Especially with a platform like this, it's meant to shoot longer strings. It's not like supposed to be a precision bolt gun, take a shot and leave. It's something that's meant to, sustain those. That's why they come standard with 10, 20 round magazines.
Yep. I think all of them, within those 5 round groups, if you wanted to take a 5 round groups, they all did very well in that 5 rounds. But the difference started to appear once we got over the 4th, 5th round. It really started to delineate, okay, what rifle can hold a really good group when that gun starts heating up? And only a few of them seem to be able to do that very well.
All right, so just some random thoughts here, but the HK and the PWS are the only 2 piston guns that we had. And I would say, I would love your opinion on this too, but I think the guns with the best 3 recoil impulses were the HK, the PWS, and the LMT. So something, I just didn't really know that about the piston guns, but the recoil impulse on this felt really great and really lended itself to returning target well, despite more reciprocating mass potentially. Yeah, this gun is a pain in the ass, but it shot well. So if you have one, stick with it. All right, so another thing is the adjustable gas. A lot of these had adjustable gas, but if it didn't need to be adjusted, we didn't adjust it. So in some of these guns, we said it was pretty punchy, but they actually had room to reduce that gas. The only 2 that we did adjust them were the Noveske N6, didn't have enough gas, so we had to bump up the gas setting. I think it's meant to be shot more suppressed. And the PWS, also Chad from Flatline Fiber Co., shout out, thanks for bringing your rifle out. He had it set up for suppressed shooting, so we had to bump it up for unsuppressed shooting. But to that point, we said a lot of these rifles were punchy, but you could tune them to be less punchy, a lot of them. So just take that with a grain of salt, realize there's some room for adjustment, and check out the spreadsheet because we have it summarized there whether or not they have those features. All right, so we also shot as a baseline test a bolt gun. This isn't the exact bolt gun, but it's very similar. Thank you, Chad from Flatline, for lending us your Tikka in 308. This is my Tikka in 6.5. But that was basically to show, 1, we are capable of shooting tight groups, and 2, to also kind of demonstrate the capabilities of bolt guns. So we only shot 1 ammo type, which was the Federal, but with that ammo type on Chad's Tikka, we shot 0.9 MOA. And what was yours?
I don't think I recorded it.
You don't record
it?
It
was bigger. Mine
okay.
was. But
it was bigger. His is always bigger. Another interesting thing to note about these is that bolt guns generally tend to be easier to shoot. There's like single recoil impulse just to push straight back into your shoulder, versus the gas guns, you kind of have to contend with the reciprocating mass, and it tends to throw you off the target more. So as far as shooting long distance, I think that bolt guns are definitely easier, but the benefits of being able to put lots of rounds precisely on target that precision gas guns offer, I think that's a really interesting characteristic. Other things about this is it's just simple, less things to go wrong. You don't have to worry about gassing issues. So I'm still a big fan of bolt guns, but I'm really excited about the results we're seeing with these precision gas guns.
Also, don't paint your bolts.
Yeah, don't paint your bolts. Take a lesson from me. I just painted the whole gun, and my smooth Tikka action isn't quite as smooth as it used to be. All right, so some final closing thoughts. One, where did we think these rifles kind of fit in a use case? Like I said, you're able to put lots of rounds precisely on target, but I think you should still have a lighter weight setup. Would you agree with that?
I would agree.
So something like this 2-10 with a top dot gives you closer aiming capabilities, night vision passive capabilities. If you have to use this kind of as a run and gun, but you have the ability to stretch out its legs and shoot further. Suppressed, obviously, always a good thing. A bipod really lends itself well to shooting in multiple positions. I also really like these ADM mounts so that you can just pop it off if it's in the way for some reason, or if you just don't need it, you want to stow that weight elsewhere. Obviously, a sling, every rifle needs a sling, but I think this is a really good configuration if you have especially good cheek riser and a trigger that is acceptable to do what you're doing. This is a really good gun that basically a guy can slot into your squad. If he has to, he can shoot this gun running, standing, that kind of thing. But it really works well if you need to do some overwatch or something like that. He can set up and have the capability to stretch his legs out and shoot farther. Also just wanted to say this was a lot of work, this was a lot of money, but we've really enjoyed this. I think this will be a huge asset to you guys, and so I hope you guys have loved this. And if you want to support us, if you want to see more stuff like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and join our email list at our website, 100concepts.com. And let us know also down in the comments what you want to see going forward. We're really excited to do some suppressed testing with some of these rifles, but please let us know if there's anything else you want to see specifically on these guns. So everybody who's stuck around this long, go to our website, 100concepts.com, and use code GASGUN20, all lowercase, for 20% off. Thank you for taking the time to watch our first foray into long-form YouTube content, and we're excited to put out more for you guys.
So we like the HK.
We do. It's shooting pretty well. Shoots good.
The data shows it pretty good, and it's pretty accurate with a lot of different ammos. And it got an Army contract, correct?
Allegedly, yeah, sure.
Allegedly. So you're an HK fan?
Sure.
All right. Here you go. Got you. Nice pair of Army shorts.
Thank you.
Nice pair of Army shorts. Nice pair of Army shorts.
Just spawn them out of his inventory.
Nice pair of Army shorts.
There's no way he planned this from the beginning.
And a nice pair of Army shorts. Welcome to the Army, gentlemen.